The fallen brothers of the big brother British. The British came to India to lift us, just as the old Aryans, So the new and improved Aryans came in the sort of the latest brand of Aryans. This is what is astonishing to me is that this you don't find in textbooks or anything. Even those who criticize it, who don't denounce the Aryan myth much more strongly than I do. And also, I'm curious to know in what language God said to the British, to Stanley Baldwin. Speak in English. It was said during the British Empire, God is an Englishman. So it's next one, please. So the future course that we are taking is these theories and start looking at alternatives. When someone brings up, present the evidence, reject unsubstantiated authority, the key is the main point about if there is one thing we need to know, we need to recognize that the Vedic civilization, especially Rig Veda, describes a maritime society. It does not describe a society of nomadic invaders or nomadic travelers. Okay? So if you want to know what the poetry of a nomadic people is like, or the steppe nomads are like, I would invite you to look at a work known. You want me to move on the other side? So the thing is, there is the work known as the Secret History of the Mongols. It talks about the Mongol tribes of Genghis Khan and those people, the antecedents. Apparently, they were descended when a deer crossed with a wolf. And then, they have mixed up their own. Okay? The key is the maritime background to the Vedas. Next one. Okay, for the maritime world, it was brought to my attention by David Fowler. This incidentally was what, how I got started in it was, although I had been working on the Krishna book for many years, was reading an article by Frawley, first time, and this thing for the first time, like everybody else who was educated in India, I had the early education in India, I had assumed the Aryan invasion theory to be true. Okay, I believed it was right, and then it looked very attractive to an untrained person that the Latin words like ignis is similar to agni, from which you get modern English words like ignite and ignition. So penta becomes pancha, and all that pancha becomes penta, and so on. Whatever it is. And then I worked with Frawley on this book, Vedic Aryans, and this one, where we stressed a little bit more of what is known as the maritime background. It was Frawley who said, he went, I'm not prepared to go as far as Frawley in saying that Rig Veda was essentially a maritime civilization, but I'm certainly prepared to say that the maritime background is very strong. The maritime I think is very strong in the Rig Veda. Next one, please. I'm not the Vedic scholar that he is. So we'll face the reality that though acrimonious exchanges and its associated theories are there, although details need to be worked out, Vedic Harrappan relationship is pretty much well understood. So we need to look beyond this. This is where we come to the maritime background. Next one, please. So essentially what I'm telling you is putting up. Okay. All future works must recognize that the Vedas are the work of a maritime people. Varuna, god of the oceans, is said to be the earliest of Vedic deities. Whether earlier or later, Varuna is a prominent deity of the Vedic people. So I quoted one translation. So the very fact that Varuna was worshipped and there are prayers to the safety of sailors and ships and all that shows that they knew the ocean. They were not a landlocked people from Central Asia. Varuna was the sea god of a maritime people. Okay, next please. And so, end of the Ice Age and floods. There was massive flooding at the end of the Ice Age due to melting of glaciers and increased rainfall. This is reflected in the Vedic and Puranic myths. This calls for combining natural history and Vedic and Puranic literature to understand the world before the Vedas. Am I doing all right? Yeah. Next please. So essentially, we just as the micro and the macro level of Harappan imagery and ecology allows us to look at the Vedic Harrappans, I believe we can look at the natural history of the late Ice Age, that is the late Pleistocene, and the transition to Holocene, to understand the meaning of the Vedic and Puranic myths, and try to go to Proto and Catholic. There are 2 books we need to read. This one, The Rigveda and the History of India, by David Frawley, looks closely at the various dynasties and their meanings. And here we wrote a popular book called Hidden Horizons, in which we emphasized, again, the maritime and the natural history background to that. Okay. And that's the direction in which I'm going, apart from another one which I'll point out a little later. Because as far as we are concerned, and my group and my colleagues are concerned, we have lost the interest in the Aryan, non-Aryan debate. Okay, that to me is a settled issue. That does not mean that everyone should do that. I'm just stating my position. Okay. Next one. And I think very interesting problems. Huh? So essentially, as you're aware that I'm, thanks to the invitation of Dr. Balram Singh, who has established the Center for Indic Studies at UMass Dartmouth, and also to the 3R Foundation, which is an educational foundation. Thanks to their extraordinary hospitality, I had a free time looking at, I don't have to worry about anything. I can spend all my time studying except teaching 1 or 2 courses. This now has allowed me to look analytically at where Indology and Indo-European studies is going. As I see it, what I would divide them into the following branches. The classical, what includes linguistics, migrationism, and these kinds of theories, which we have been going on. And next, I would look at classified as theological, that is religious studies. Okay, and I would also look define as ideological, that is the Hindu nationalistic approach, the Marxist approach, and Freudian. I mean, I don't want to mention names or anything, but this is a line of activity